TSUTigers.com. We're here with head football coach Rod Reed. Coach Reed, this is the first of our weekly Tuesday media roundups where you answer the fans' questions. We'll just jump right into it here. Mike from Antioch wants to know, have you ever played in or coached in a game with that bad of weather as it was on Saturday night? And if so, when?
Well, I never coached in a game with that bad of weather, but I can remember, I want to say back in it had to be 87, maybe 88. We played Florida A&M over at Vanderbilt, and it was raining as hard or harder than it was on Saturday night. But at least, you were on turf that game. It wasn't grass. So, yeah, I have played in one, but I've never coached in a game with those bad conditions.
Now, we saw on Saturday, just kind of follow up on that, it definitely affected some of the passing as well as some of the rushing a little bit. As a player who went through a game kind of like that, how does it affect the play on the field?
Well, you got to be extra careful. You got to secure the snap, which you saw a boatload of fumble snaps on both sides. I think we fumbled 2 snaps, and they may have fumbled 4 or 5 snaps. But you got to secure the football as a quarterback. You got to seek the football, make sure you're riding that center out of there, making sure you got complete possession of the ball. And you got to secure the football when you're running the ball. You got to have 2 hands on the ball when you're running through the hole. And you got to understand that the football is important. So those are the 2 major things. The footing, LP field drains really well. I mean, it was still a great track. It was more the rain than the track that we were on.
Coach, everybody saw if you saw the game, Tom Smith, the running back from Tennessee, was a great standout, as well as, of course, Anthony Bass, Nick Thrasher. Those guys are always going to be solid. Jameer from Franklin wants to know, now that you have seen the game film, who are some of the younger players that you thought really stood out of the game?
I thought defensively, our young defensive line, those guys that were out there, Chris Collins, Jason Morrow, it was the first time they got a chance to get out there in some live action. I thought they did a really good job. On special teams, we had some young guys out there on the kickoff team. I think LaKalen Holland and, Terrell Bonds, all those guys that got an opportunity to play, which is good for us because game experience is invaluable to young guys. So, we had some young guys to show up out there that, other than the guys that were obvious on Saturday.
It was a dominating performance offensively, defensively, special teams. But Tim from Hermitage wants to point out one negative. How do you go about cleaning up some of the penalties you had on Saturday night?
Well, hopefully we can attribute that to first game jitters, which I did a bad job preparing this football team in that aspect, and that falls solely on my shoulders. And I think I mentioned that to one of the reporters on Saturday night. You cannot have 18 penalties, and especially 11 of the pre-snap variety when you're jumping off sides and you're especially on the offensive line. Those are drive killers. You start 1st and 15, or you got a 2nd and 5. Now it's 2nd and 10. And then defensively, I think we jumped once where, went from a 2nd and 10 to a 2nd and 5. You give them yards and a free down. So we've got to do a better job, and that's just being disciplined, and we've got to do a better job as coaches, making sure we do things in practice to ensure that does not happen again. Coach,
thanks so much for taking some time to answer some of these fan questions. Fans, remember to ask Coach your questions by tweeting them at TSU_Tigers or emailing them to jmitch18@tnstate.edu. Coach, thanks again. Good luck this weekend against Alabama State.
Thank you. Go Big Blue.